Okay, today we're going to begin a couple of days worth of lessons where we discuss Editha, the short story by Dean Howells. And to start out, you already really filled out your author study, and so you're really coming to this lecture with a good deal of information on this author of your own. And so just very briefly, I wanted to note that this is not an author who had a strong educational background, and yet he became a prolific writer. So how was he able to accomplish that? Well, in a couple of ways. He immersed himself in reading. He was an avid reader. And then he just began writing on his own. He started practicing poetry when he was just very young, and he just continued to write. And he, by that immersion into the language, really became an amazing author. And so I just want to encourage you that that's really what happens. Those who write well read often. And so just keep reading and keep practicing your writing. Now, this author, the reason we're really studying him right now is because he is another author that made use of psychological realism. And in fact, your textbook actually mentions that as a realist, he is the one that brings sort of a weight to that area. By his excellent writing, he sort of legitimizes the realism. Again, I just already mentioned that he produces so many works, 1,200 short stories and essays and articles, and then contributing to 200 books. Some of those he authored himself. And I want you to know that all authors have a purpose, but his purpose is going to be beyond the wanting to entertain his audience. He has a message for his audience in his works. But he's not going to be one who explicitly tells his viewpoint. You're going to understand his message to you, his viewpoint, but you're going to do that through character development and observing the character development. And in fact, again, from your author information from your book, if you happen to read that as you made your author studies, you would note that he didn't rely on plot and setting as much as some authors do. Instead, he really focused in on that characterization, developing those characters to drive the theme and to drive his message. And that is why we're going to study characterization using his work. So if we were to fill out a soapstone on him, we really are not going to be able to tell his purpose until we really delve deeply into the characters and what he makes them say and how he makes them respond and so forth. And I'm not going to spend a lot of time on that now because in a few minutes we are going to be really looking at that more carefully. So just very quickly though, right in the first few paragraphs, you're going to know that the subject in this piece is war. But that's not a sophisticated answer yet, is it? So I've been talking about how we don't want our subject answer entry to be just one word or even a phrase. I put lines here to help you understand, but by the end of the story, you should be able to give a sophisticated 2 to 3 sentence discourse on exactly what Howells wants us to know about war. But we can't really do that until we read the story, of course. So the occasion, the specific war we're talking about here is the Spanish-American War of 1898. And Howells published this work in 1905 in response to this war. And so without going into the history of that particular war, you probably know about it from history class, but you should at least know that it was an unpopular war, like the Mexican War and the Vietnam War. So some truly supported it, and others were completely against it. So it was a controversial war, to be sure. So we need to know, well, what does Howells think about it? And what does he think about war in general? What is he going to do with his characters to help us know that message? So let's now turn to the idea of characterization in stories. So right now, I'm going to give you a couple of seconds to think about who your favorite characters are. It doesn't have to be a character from this particular school year. I'm talking about through your whole life. And I'm talking about over several genres. Maybe it's a story that your family read to you. Maybe it is a novel that you had to read. Maybe it is a movie that you viewed. Who are your favorite characters? Okay, hopefully some characters came to your mind. I'll just tell you a few of mine. I have so many, it was hard to choose, but one of the favorites, I've read this book several times, Great Expectations by Charles Dickens. And so the main character, the protagonist in the work is Pip. And he starts out as a kid at the beginning of the story, and you watch him grow up. And I like him most because he's so real. He's so flawed. He goes through so much. He's so misunderstood at times. And I just really appreciate his willingness to grow and to learn. I really appreciate Pip. Another that I like is Anne Shirley. She is a gem of a character from Anne of Green Gables. Maybe you've met her too. I like her in the first book, Anne of Green Gables, and then in the subsequent books as she grows. She's spirited, she's stubborn, she's committed. I think of her relationship with Marilla and Matthew, the brother and sister that adopt Anne when she's a child, and she's so committed to them throughout their lifetime. She's such a blessing to them. She's so energetic. I wanted to go back and say she's committed also to her students later on, and she's committed to her friends for sure. She's such a dear friend to many. So maybe you've met Anne. Maybe she's a favorite of yours as well. But in any case, as you read a story, especially longer works, you're really going to get to meet characters and grow to really appreciate some of them, almost love some of them. And so we can use those past experiences with characters to understand our learning goal today. And that is that students should be able to identify what textual details reveal about characters, what those details in the text reveal about the characters' perspectives and their motives and their choices. And so how do you do that? How do you get to know the characters? Well, I kind of want to liken it to real life. You have friendships, right? You have friends and you have relationships with family members and so forth. And so whether you want to think of your favorite character right now as I talk about this, or whether you don't really have a favorite character just now and you want to think about some real life person and how it is that you come to appreciate them, here is how you get to know a character in a book. First of all, you observe their actions. And you think about their dialogue. You think about the things that they say. And isn't that true to real life too? That's how you get to know people, because you listen to them and you speak with them. You evaluate their responses to others. And I think this one's really important, because sometimes what you appreciate about your own friends is maybe the way your own friends reach out to others. Maybe you watch them in the hallway and they're the person who empathizes with others around them, and that makes you appreciate them all the more. It's the same thing with characters in a book. As you watch them interact with others, you might appreciate them. Or maybe it's a character that you don't appreciate because you don't like the way that they treat others. You also could appreciate their decisions. Or again, maybe you disagree with their decisions, but in any case, you make note of them. And then right now, especially, we're really looking for that psychological realism. That is something that you are privy to in a book or in a short story, is that you sometimes know what characters are thinking. Now, with your friendships, you only know what they're sharing with you, right? You can't read people's minds. Maybe they are such a close friend that they're sharing what they're thinking with you. But certainly in books, we have the privilege of knowing some of the characters' thoughts. And that can help us to understand them and get to know them better. And so really what we're trying to do here is get to the agency. What drives the characters? What's the why? Why are they doing what they're doing? Why do they say what they say? What is their perspective? We want to know what the character's perspective is. And so really at the beginning of the stories and the beginning of novels and plays, all characters appear to be flat. Editha right now is a flat character to you. Unless you read ahead, you really don't know anything about her. And you don't know about her fiance, Georgette. So all characters sort of start out flat. Some characters stay flat, and that's a literary term that you probably remember from past classes. Some of them never actually develop much at all. But of course, the protagonist and sometimes the antagonist and some of the other main characters in the work, they become extremely complex by the end of the story, or certainly by the end of the novel. So much so that sometimes it just seems like the second image here, that they kind of like climb right out of the page of the book, and some of them climb right into your heart, right? You love them. You grow to really admire them in some way, and you remember them forever. They're sort of a part of you forever. In fact, I know at the end of some books, when I am almost finished with the book, the last few pages, I'm just kind of, this sadness comes over me, like, I don't want to part from these people. I don't want this book to end, because with the book ending, this sort of relationship in a way ends. And so you just really become beholden to some of the characters in works. And obviously that means that those characters were well developed and they're round characters. And what we need to understand is, they feel like real people to us because they were crafted and designed by the author to be like real people. And they're probably a type of person that you could meet in real life. And so for today, I don't have time to get into the guided practice. And so essentially, we are cutting this lesson in half. You are ending your lesson here and not actually starting your reading of Editha. You're welcome to start it if you want, but you're going to want to annotate in a certain way. I can show you the next slide really quickly here. You're going to be mining quotes for characterization. You're going to be searching out quotes for characterization in this work. And ultimately, you're going to fill out a grid where you take characters like Editha or her fiance George, and you assign them a character trait. For example, and think of a real life person or another favorite character that you are thinking of. You would be able to say of your friend, my friend is, kind or self-sacrificing or something like that. You're going to be able to give Editha a characteristic, George some characteristics, and then you're going to want to support those with textual evidence. So this is the ultimate goal. We're going to be filling out this grid, and then we can write about one of the characters. And I'll show you one more thing just so you see where we're going. In the next lesson, we will go into the actual text of the short story Editha, and we will start annotating the character's action and the character's dialogue. We'll highlight and make comments in another color. And then the character's contemplations, or like that psychological realism where we're thinking about identifying their thoughts. And so this is kind of part 1 of 2 lessons where we need to get into actually identifying characterization in the text. So if you would like to work ahead a little bit, what you could do is pre-read this, because this is going to be a close reading that we're going to be doing where we need to stop and we need to highlight and choosing specific colors and making notes. And so best practice is always to just read it first and just enjoy the story, or at least the first part of the story, because I'm going to spread this out over a couple of days to give you time to read and to annotate in this way. And so you could do that. You could go into your text and you could actually just start reading the story, Editha, but otherwise you're finished with this part of the lesson, and we will annotate part together and understand that further tomorrow. Thank you so much for your kind attention. I hope you're having a great day. Bye.